I'm Pastor Jason Talsness. Welcome to the Sunday Sermon. Grace and peace be to you from our Lord God, the Father in heaven, and his Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Get this going here. I got too many microphones here. There we go. Last summer, I went to a play at a place called the Goat Farm. It's in Atlanta, not far from the IKEA or the water treatment plant, if you know where that is. And the Goat Farm is now an art center. It was built in the 1880s for the cotton industry, and so it's this vast estate with different buildings and brick structures. Some are dilapidated and some are not, and dwelling structures. It's just this place that is really a piece of Southern history that the developers have traded hands with before finally, about 10 years ago, settling on making it an art center. So there's dance and painting and art, and there are plays there. And I went to a play at the Goat Farm based on a science fiction book called The Navigator, which I had never heard of either. And when we went there, we got our tickets, and they said, just wait here, and the show will begin at 7:30. And then at 7:30, all of a sudden, some of the people who were in the crowd with us started talking, and it wasn't long before we realized the play had begun, and the play had begun in our midst. And then, throughout the play, the plot took us through different sections of the Goat Farm. And we walked with the actors and interacted with the actors, and we were part of the story. There were the bad people. I think they were kind of aliens, and I was giving this thing to shake with little BBs in it. And I'm not kidding. When I shook it, the bad people went away. It worked. And it was really fun. It made me think of worship. Usually a play, you just go there and you sit there and they do their stuff up there and you're wondering when the intermission is. And there we were interacting in the story. It made me think of you all in worship. How could you interact more? But at that play, The Navigator, I felt connected to the story because I was in it. And today we're going to talk about connecting to stories. That's our theme for our theme for today, because this Easter we've been talking about, well, what does the church have to offer? Jesus Christ rose from the dead, brought life to his people. What does that look like? What are God's people called to be? And so we're doing this series, and it's on the 4 C's. We're saying life is like a storm, and the church offers shelter from the storm, and we offer 4 things that start with the letter C. So the week after Easter, we talked about compassion. Above all, God's people need to be compassionate. Compassion isn't everything. Last week, we talked about community. In times of stress during the storm, people want to isolate themselves. But that God's people offer community during the storm. But you want to know what? Just imagine a community that has compassion and community and links, but just sits there. It doesn't quite work. A community needs to go somewhere, do something. Stuff needs to happen in the community. And that's where we focus on today, that we are a community that connects the story between God and people today. We do love stories as people. We are creatures of stories. Kids can't read, so grown-ups need to tell them stories. And so we read a book to our kids, or they watch a story on TV. Our daughter, who's 4, is very fond of asking, "Tell me a story of when Uncle Jonathan was a baby." Okay, Uncle Jonathan, she loves her uncle. She wants to interact, and deepen her relationship with the uncle. So we tell the story, and her eyes just kind of, she goes somewhere. She listens to that story. And then she wants to hear a story about her older brother when he was little. Did he ever get in trouble? Okay, imagine that. A younger sister wanting to know a story about her older brother in trouble. These children are little story sponges. They love stories, right? And classically speaking, stories begin once upon a time. And in that little phrase, once upon a time, it's a barrier, it's a buffer. It's saying, there was a time, but not now, and a place, but not here, where, and then you fill in the rest of the story, kings, princesses, dragons, and that keeps a safe distance from the story. Yet the child is interacting and in the story the entire time. Children love stories, and every family has stories. One thing I love about being a pastor is listening to moms talk about their kids. They have stories about their kids that reflect how they are now that they're older. Some of you are here with your moms, and you should be a little nervous. These stories are told in love, in fondness. Stories about the young person that give us insight into the person today. Family stories help reinforce the identity of the family. Whether it's a story of something that went wrong or something went right, those stories are shared to strengthen ties in how the community or the family understands itself. And if it's true for families, it's true for cultures, right? We got folk tales. I used to love Hercules and Greek mythology. Anthropologists will say that communities identified themselves through stories. I used to love the Norse tales of Thor, the god of thunder, and I would think about my Norwegian relatives and how they believed there really was a god of thunder, and I would be mesmerized by those stories, how they made sense out of the storms. And if every family has a story and every person has a story, we can think of our lives as, the $2 word, as a narrative, right? A string of stories. Our council, when we gather, in addition to church business, for the last couple years, we've been sharing our faith story, our faith autobiography. And people shared kind of their upbringing and their relationship with the church if they had one, and relatives who were influential in them. And then everybody told that story about when they first came to Amazing Grace and who welcomed there. It's a story. And we get to know each person a little by their stories. Now, we have a book that we heard from this morning called the Bible. And the Bible is a lot of things, but at the core, the Bible is a story. It's a story about God, a story about God's people. It's a story about how God loves and stays in relationship with God's people. And when we hear from Jesus, in order to teach about God and how God loves God's people, Jesus told stories. There once was a man with 2 sons, and one asked for his inheritance. There once was a sower who went out and threw seeds and threw them in different places. There was once a king, who had subjects and wanted to throw a party for his son when there was a wedding. Stories about God. And if we look at that word parable, at the root of the Greek word parabolos is comparison. Jesus puts out the parable, we compare it to our lives, and there's truth in that story about God and about us. And we dwell in that story and we think about stuff. It's not just entertainment. It's digging into life and to God. And so Jesus, in our gospel reading today, tells the story of him being the good shepherd. It's an extended metaphor that Jesus is our good shepherd, and that we are like sheep, and that he provides. And then, oddly enough, Jesus switches to gate language, and that suddenly Jesus isn't just the shepherd, but also the gate, and no one comes in or goes by him. A lot of people think, well, if Jesus is the gate, that's to keep me safe, away from the world. You know, it's almost like we'll keep you penned up away from the fun parties, right? But I want to say that Jesus is the gate that brings you into green pastures, into places of blessing. It's not just withdrawing from the world, but Jesus bringing us into a new place. That's the story that Jesus puts out for us to think about our walk with him. We can think about our lives as a story, and we can think about our lives as having storms in them, and that the stories are what we base our identity on. And when things that are valuable to us, that we connect to our identity, are threatened, then our story is threatened. Because we base our understandings of identity and self through important things like work and family and activities. And when we have a storm and those things are threatened, if not changed significantly during that storm, we've lost our story. People going through hardship aren't sure what their story is anymore. They've lost their story. Anthropologists say there's such thing as a meta-narrative, and that is, it's a story through which the entire group is defined. And that part of what's happened in America in the last 100 years is that we've lost our defining story. We've lost our meta-narrative. Because of the meta-narrative, we have an existing story where we know our place and how we function and how we have meaning. But for most of us, in times of tragedy, then that story is interrupted. So when we can think about our culture and a mixing of stories, we don't have one overarching story anymore. We've got some American folk tales like Pecos Bill and John Henry. You may have stories from your family, and we have fairy tales and folk tales, but we've been dislodged from the meta-narrative. In Christian communities, in Christian times, the Bible was the meta-narrative. That's how people understood their life and kind of put it into greater meaning. Other cultures had other things. We've lost our meta-narrative, and so some anthropologists will say that's why we're having all these problems about depression and anxiety, is because we've lost our meta-narrative. I'm not sure if I could push it that far, but it's something to think about. But what happens is in the absence of a meta-narrative, it's not like we're 21st century people and we're sophisticated, not like those ancient people with their little folk tales. No. People invent their own meta-narrative. Think about this for a second. You know the Jimmy Buffett, and people who go to the Jimmy Buffett concerts are called parrot heads. Now this Jimmy Buffett thing, love Jimmy Buffett, is kind of takes his followers to a different place, right? Our lives are full of work and boring, but Jimmy Buffett will take us to sea and sand and sailing, looking for that lost shaker of salt. Jimmy Buffett. He's got followers. It's almost like a religion, isn't it? Just, Jimmy Buffett, take me to that place, away from my life. Sing those songs. Transport me. Meta-narrative. I don't know how many of you have seen those documentaries called The Trekkers or The Trekkies, but there are people who love Star Trek who have formed their own Star Trek communities, and they have ranks, and they have titles, and they dress up in outfits, and they get together, and they have mission projects. That is their meta-narrative. Star Trek, the next generation, go boldly where no one has gone before. They're connecting to a story. I have some friends that dabble in those circles. Believe it or not, I knew some nerdy people in middle school. Star Trek is the meta-narrative of their lives. You know, the Grateful Dead. I don't want to go too far into the Grateful Dead, but there's the Grateful Dead. A lot of you know in urban culture, certain circles, there won't be belts that are worn. So the pants are coming down, right? And, you know, pants on the ground, looking like a fool with your pants on the ground, you know, hashtag 5 years ago. But maybe you know, maybe you don't know, that comes out of prison culture. That in prison, you can't wear belts, okay? You can hurt people with a belt. And so in prison fashion, you don't wear a belt. And then those prisoners got released, and on the streets, they don't wear a belt either. It harkens into a lifestyle that says, I've had a hard past, or I'm bad, or I'm not to be messed with. And other people embrace that fashion, whether they know the meta-narrative or not. Country music, I don't know. Our culture is getting more urban, but country music continues to become popular because of the themes that country music has to offer are real, about life and hardship and just stuff that they sing about. I can't relate to pop radio anymore, but I can relate to country music because of what it sings about. And some people kind of start to dress up like the country music fan. You get a pair of boots, a cowboy hat. That's a meta-narrative. Now, what happens when people reach a storm is, too often, their story stops, and they are defined by that storm. So a person might have been in a car accident, and they were injured, and they hurt their back. And so for the rest of their life, they understand themselves as a victim of a car accident, and their story stopped right there. Or sometimes people become diagnosed with a mental malady, or a medical malady, and they are suffering from something, and that becomes their story, and their identity is sick person. And sometimes people are hurt as children, and that hurt carries through into adulthood. And so they're defined as, I was a person who was hurt in my childhood, and that's their story. Now here's where the church comes in. That we need to connect people to a bigger story. We need to help people think of their lives and themselves as something bigger than just the storms. And that's where Scripture comes in. And I got a little illustration for you, a physical thing. This is a Bible given to me by my friend Martin. Martin's really smart. He knows the Bible well, and he gave this to me as a gift this Christmas. And this is a Bible, and it's got a ribbon in it, right? And so you open the ribbon because you want to know what? God's Word is a gift. God's Word is a gift to us. But you want to know the thing about this ribbon? Look at this ribbon. It's not a magic trick. It goes through the whole Bible. And the idea is that there's a thin red line of plot going through every page in Scripture. That the Bible is not just a rule book. The Bible isn't just something to make yourself feel better than those who don't follow. That the Bible is a story of God's mission to love and bless the world. And so we can go in Genesis and see God blessing the world in Genesis, and in Exodus, God blessing the world in Exodus. Every single page has this line through it. History of Israel, the kings, the prophets speaking God's word has a strain of God's blessing in it. You got the laws of Leviticus, hard to find, but God's love is in there too. And then we get to Jesus, who helps make us sense of the whole witness of Scripture. That God is a God of love, and that in Jesus we have life. There was a day when this book was foreign, alien. I didn't like it because usually people pointed out things where I was falling short because of what this book is. That these are a bunch of people I didn't care about a God that I was kind of interested in. The book was distant. But now, thanks to this red line, I find myself in Scripture. And I find you in Scripture. I'm not bragging, because you should worry if I couldn't do that. Because there's something that's happened to me where I can connect this to what's going on in my life and see that I'm part of a bigger story. And that having been transformed by being connected to this story, it is my mission and your mission to share and connect this story with others. That is the church. And I will confess that we as Amazing Grace are pretty good at compassion, that we are pretty good at community, but when it comes to connecting the story, we have a lot of work to do. Because we keep each other, generally speaking, at a safe distance, and we invite people to worship and hope that they enjoy it, but never get around to hearing their story. Of the 4 C's, connecting to the story should be a priority for you. And then if you feel that priority is met, the next challenge before you is to help someone else connect their story to this. Because in helping others connect, in helping people through their storms so they're not defined by their accidents, they're not defined by their medical condition, they're not defined by past ills, in connecting others to the story, our lives are given value and added meaning. It's a richer blend of Christianity. It has been said that Easter was the biggest trick God has ever played on the devil. On Good Friday, the devil thought he had defeated God. Jesus was in a tomb. But God had a bigger plan. And God rose Jesus from the dead. And there's a lot in there with that story. But what I want to put to you before you today is this. That though Jesus' life was negated or, he died, God brought Jesus back to life and, follow me here, negated the negation. We love and serve a God who has the power to negate the negation in our lives, writing a new story with a brighter future. To God be the glory, now and forever. Amen.